Hey, how you doing today? I am Tequila Coleman. In today's video, I want to ask you the question, do you really fear God? Do you really fear God? Now, I'm going to take you through this teaching. I'm going to give it to you just the same way how God just, gave it to me. I was sitting here reading out of the book of Genesis, Genesis chapter 22. It talks about, this is when God tested Abraham concerning his son Isaac. Um, it said in verse 1, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about. Now, you all been hearing me talk about altars, sacrifices, right? And so we're about to see right here how God was testing Abraham to see if he really feared God. Okay. And so the question I'm asking to you today is, do you really fear God? And we're about to find out as we continue on in this teaching. So it goes on to say how, long story short, Abraham, he was obedient to the instructions of the Lord. He took his son Isaac. It said he saddled the donkey, took with him his two of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you. Verse 6. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, father. Now Isaac is realizing, he's like, wait a minute. Okay, we going to sacrifice something, but where, what are we sacrificing? So he said, yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? So he's like, wait a minute, there's something going on here. Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the two of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. Now let's stop right here. When we talk about altars require sacrifice. Okay? Altars require sacrifice. And depending on the kind of altar it is, okay, the God the altar is erected to is going to determine what sacrifices are required. So we see that this is the Lord testing Abraham. So the God that this altar is being erected to is God. And God is who determines the sacrifice, okay? So he already told Abraham, take your son, your only son, the one you love, and sacrifice him for me, okay? Follow me here. uh Genesis 22 verse let's start at 10. Then he reached out his hand. Now he already got Isaac on the altar. Okay. He got him bound and everything, about to sacrifice him. It said, then he reached out his hand, took the knife to slay his son. Verse 11. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Do not lay hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Let's stop right here. God tested Abraham to see if he feared God. And in the test, Abraham passed the test, okay? His action, communicated to God, yes, I fear you because I'm not wavering with what you told me to do. I'm not second guessing. I'm not doubting. I'm not telling you no in your instructions, that God has given Abraham. He was obedient to God's instruction. And therefore, that communicated to God, you fear me, right? And when we read on, let me just finish this out right here. Let's go to verse 16. Well, let's go to 15. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. So now, because Abraham showed God, I fear you, he was obedient to God's instruction. Now we are reading how God is telling him, I will surely bless you. Okay. And now, so I say all that to say, because God has told you to get out of the kitchen. He called for a divine separation between you and your spouse. It's sacrifice. He's trying to see, do you fear God? Because God has given you instruction. One of the definitions for sacrifice means the act of giving up something that you want to keep, especially in order to get or do something else. God already knows because he told you that this is your spouse. You want to keep your spouse. You don't want to give them up. He already knows this, but he is also testing your heart to see, are you going to be obedient to my instruction? He's testing your heart to see, do you fear me? Do you fear God? Because based upon your obedience to God's instruction will determine to God if you fear God or not. For some of you, God has been telling you, get out of the kitchen. He has already established a divine separation between you and your spouse. However, because you're not willing to give up your spouse in order to be obedient to the instructions of the Lord, you are communicating to God, I do not fear you. I fear losing my spouse more than I fear God. This is what you're communicating to God. And so God is testing us. And he want to see, do you fear me? Do you fear God? Are you willing to sacrifice your spouse by giving them up? Are you? Because based upon your answer and your response is going to determine to God if you fear him or not. See, we could say out of our mouth, oh, I fear God. I love God. I believe in God. But let me take a look at your action. And as we just read in the book of Genesis 22, Abraham was communicating in his action. He didn't know that God was going to send the angel to stop him from slaughtering his only son, the one he loved. He didn't know. He was just obedient to the instructions of the Lord. And as a result of his obedience, as a result of him just getting his son and the wood and saddle and the donkeys, that's faith in work, in action. He was walking by faith, not by sight, believing God gonna make a way, God will provide. Even when his own son began to ask him, because his son, that discernment kicked in his son, like, wait a minute. So God is looking to see, do we fear him? And we show God how much we fear God by being willing to give up our spouses. Now, let me be clear, because I know some of you are going to say, well, does that mean God going to send a replacement spouse? No, he's testing your heart to see, do you fear me more than man? Do you fear God more than losing, or keeping your spouse, right? God is after our heart. He's after our character. He's testing us to see which God do you serve. Sacrificing your spouse to the Lord doesn't mean, you're not going to get married. It doesn't mean God changed his mind. It just simply means God is testing to see your heart posture. Do you fear God? You have to be willing to give up your spouse. You have to get to a place in this stance where you say, you know what, God, I'm being obedient to your instruction. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to waver with you. I'm not going to keep doing all this back and forth, up and down. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to be obedient to it. Okay? So God is trying to see, do you fear him? Okay, remember, we're talking about altars here. Okay? Altars require sacrifice. God already told you to start praying for your spouse. What you fail to realize is that while we're praying and fasting, you building an altar to God. Now we gotta, because altars require sacrifice. Now God steps in and create a divine separation. and he tell you, let him go. That's the sacrifice. Are you willing to let go of your spouse? Are you willing? And based upon your obedience, it's going to determine whether God is going to bless you or not. Okay. So I highly recommend you go back over and read Genesis 22, the whole chapter. Read it for yourself, get understanding, allow God to download, his wisdom and revelation to you concerning your situation. Okay. So I wanted to just bring this to you and help you to answer your own question. Do you really fear God? Do you really fear God? So that is it. I am Tequila Coleman. I'll talk to you all real soon. Till